Hasan, please, I'm 32. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I don't know why every old person loses their goddamn mind when I'm giving you a brief introduction to, like, you know, Gen Alpha and young Zoomers. I'm telling you what the terminology is, okay? I'm giving you the terminology. Do you want to know about it, or do you want to act like Jake Tapper and be like, oh, yeah, my son is apolitical? Oh, I saw this. Speaking of, like, journalists missing the mark a little bit, here's Jake Tapper revealing something about his son that I find really interesting. It just is just like everything I know about sons of this age demographic. Let's take a look at what Jake Tapper was saying here when discussing how Democrats have lost young men.
A left-leaning podcast that shall remain nameless. And we were talking about my kids, because I think they were both people without kids. And they asked me about my son, and I said he was, you know, he's a football player, and he wants to be a policeman. And their joke was about my 15-year-old son, oh, how does he feel about minorities? Like the idea that he wants to be a policeman.
He's not talking about Chapo. It's probably like Pod Save America or something. Jake Tapper would never go on Chapo. That's really funny.
He's racist, my son. And, like, you know, that was the big laugh.
Also, I hate that this guy is the, like, dog whisperer of young men, Scott Galloway or whatever, Scott Gallagher. And he has, like, weird ass takes on this stuff too. Okay. He's like, oh, my 15-year-old son, does he hate minorities? Like, first of all, they're making a joke. I don't know who the hell was interviewing him. Okay. But, like, 15-year-old son plays football, wants to be a cop. We all know he's not going to be a cop, by the way. Jake Tapper is never going to let his son be a cop. Are you kidding me? Why in the ever-loving would he ever allow that? That's why you're Jake Tapper. Your son's going to be in media, okay? Your son is either going to be in media or immediately get, like, a cushy staffing job with, like, a high-level DC person and go through that and then maybe become a senator one day, okay? Let's be real. Your son is not becoming a police officer. He's 15 years old. It's just not, it's never going to happen. Let's continue.
I got dragged in the comments and all that stuff. And I thought to myself, this is why you fuckers are losing elections.
100%.
Like, my football playing son, who has no political views. He's 15. He thinks about World War II and gaming and playing linebacker. That's his world. You're deciding he's a racist because he wants to be a cop. And why does he want to be a cop?
Okay, first of all, that's a joke. All right? Like, I don't know. Are there joy killers in the left and scolds on the left? Absolutely. People that absolutely love to behave as though being the biggest woke scold means you are the most morally consistent, best leftist. Okay. But, like, that's a joke. That's a joke. Like, you're like, oh, my 15-year-old really loves World War II and wants to be a cop and plays football and doesn't care about politics. Like, first of all, every 15-year-old is already mainlining some of the worst reactionary propaganda on a daily basis. Let's be real. You're a bad parent if you're oblivious to this reality. Okay? Ask your son what he thinks about hoes. All right? Ask your son what he thinks about women. If he says they're all hoes, then you know they are watching every bad manosphere podcast that's out there. Okay? Your son's going to be like, on God, them chopped huz, they're destroying my life. Or he's going to call them foids. There's only two, or females. That's the woke version, by the way. If your 15-year-old son calls women females, okay, that's salvageable. If he calls them foids, make sure that there's no weapons in the house, okay, because that's a mash in the making. And if he says chopped huz or like bops or whatever, then, you know, that's also somewhat salvageable. He'll grow out of it. Foids is probably the worst version of that. What are these words? I'm just giving you the different the different political leanings that young men have, every single one of them revolves around hating women. Okay. Every single one of them revolves around hating women. Is just like, how badly do you, like, how much does it play a role in your life? Okay. If you say like femoids, that's an incel term. He's probably gone. Okay. Very difficult to save. Like we're talking Hitler Youth. All right. We're talking, this person is like has deep resentment built in against women in general. Okay. If they're saying like chopped huz or chuz or huz in general, like that's just someone trying to be cool. Like that's salvageable to a certain degree. It's still misogynistic, but like, or like fine shit. That's another one. Like this is AAVE baked into the collective consciousness of Generation Alpha and young Zoomers, mostly off of TikTok. Okay. Hasan, please, I'm 32. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I don't know why every old person loses their goddamn mind when I'm giving you a brief introduction to, like, you know, Gen Alpha and young Zoomers. I'm telling you what the terminology is. Okay. I'm giving you the terminology. Do you want to know about it, or do you want to act like Jake Tapper and be like, oh, yeah, my son is apolitical? Shut the fuck up. Shut up and listen. Okay? Yes, 30 is old, because guess what? Guess what? Back in the day when people were dying before they made it to 18 on a regular basis, okay, 30 was old. Then there was a brief period where 30 wasn't old, okay? For like the last 50, 60 years, 30 wasn't considered old. But now that like people can present themselves as full human beings online at the age of 12, 30 is old again, okay? Especially because 12-year-olds are extremely online, so they dominate discourse. It sucks, but yes, when 12-year-olds online can present themselves as full developed persons when they're clearly not, okay? All of a sudden, 30 is old again. That's how it is, okay? Figure it out. It's just the reality. Sorry. You know, get with the Skibbity program, okay? Skibbity Riz, Ohio Phantom Tax. That's it. Least consistent streamer law. What? Yeah. When someone says, my son's not into politics, he's into World War to be a cop and also gaming, your son's watching Asmongold. Okay. Your son is watching Asmongold for sure. But he plays football, so he probably doesn't watch Asmongold. He probably watches Andrew Tate, which again, adjusted to how terrifying the situation is, adjusted to how bad things are, I think, you know, I guess like Aiden Ross might be preferable, like salvageable, because like that's a thing that they encountered because it was the cool thing to do. You know what I mean? Because that's what young boys care about, being cool and being and fitting in. And if that's like the domineering force in your age demographic, then you might have found yourself in the throes of this kind of politics, specifically because you thought it was cool or because all of your friends were doing it, and therefore you could probably get out of it. Okay. What's really funny about this stuff, by the way, is that a lot of people on TikTok apparently have been yelling at me because I said, you know, we gotta figure out a way to like reach young men. They're angry and resentful. And a lot of people instantly went back to their stupid, like, liberal instincts of being like, no, we should continue vilifying men across the board unconditionally. It's like, okay, well, then good luck. You know what I mean? I'm not saying we should just like take the concerns that men have about like why women won't fuck them seriously and then lean into their entitlement. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm simply stating that like there are obvious issues here. Okay. There's obvious resentment here. And I don't think like automatic vilification is solving this, especially as a political party. Like, think about it. Think about how much Chapo, for example, got fucking railed. Think about how much we got railed as Bernie bros. You know what I mean? Oh, it was so dangerous. It was so dangerous that Bernie Sanders has young men. And it's not even just young white men, by the way. Make no mistake, it's young men across the board. That's the other side of the story that a lot of people are failing to comprehend. The other side of the story is that it's not just white men, okay? It's all young men. People don't understand that, like, the racial polarization between the two parties is going away as the winnings from, like, as the W's that the Democratic Party could have presented during the civil rights struggle goes away. And as, like, the only people that remember that, the only black people that remember that are like 60 plus years old. Okay. More and more young black men and young black people, young brown people in general, do not look to the Democratic Party as like the automatic lesser evil any longer. It's that simple. And the Democrats have no solution for this. I don't know. I just, like, the Democrats are no longer the automatic, we are helping the working poor party. They have successfully they've successfully shed that attitude. They've successfully shed that marketing. They really wanted to. They wanted to be the party for the super elite. And here's where we are. They can't even take advantage of the previous. They can't even take advantage of the previous marketing that helped them win elections and build coalitions. MAGA cosplays as the working class. The Dems cosplay as anti-racist. This is a pretty reductive but decent way of looking at it.
Cop wants to be a cop because he wants to help people, you know, and he thinks that's the best way he can help people. And that's how the Democratic Party talks to men.
You don't go after their bad role models like you used to, but their behavior is pretty pathological. They're pampered and pandered to constantly. What? I don't think you understand. And this is something that I say all the time. I want universality. I don't care. Healthcare for all means even Nazis get healthcare, okay? If you think that, like, the things that I'm advocating for are specifically tailored towards young men's false sensibilities, you're delusional. That's not what I'm saying. Okay? That's not what I'm saying at all. Everybody, this is why universal programs are important. This is what I mean. There is no moment where I'm like, hey, oh, do you feel like you should kill all women because, like, this girl rejected you? Yeah, you're right, King. Lean into that. Like, is there ever a moment where I've said that? Is there ever a moment where I've made excuses? No. I'm simply saying that the Democrats running, right? The Democrats running for office cannot try to present themselves as an anti-racist party only by claiming that their enemy is white men, okay? You're not doing anything. You're not even doing anti-racism. I'm not even saying that this is actually real racism. Reverse racism is real racism. I'm simply stating that presenting yourself as that is not actually doing anything. Presenting yourself as a enemy of they're going to clip you as pro healthcare for Nazis. Well, welcome to the world of Hasan HasanAbi Piker. I have always maintained that position. Medicare for all means for all. I want universal social housing, okay, for everybody. I want government funded public housing. That's it. The whole purpose of the goddamn government is to make it so that it's harder for people to entertain. It's harder for people to take advantage, opportunists to take advantage of the volatile market conditions, the volatile economic conditions to move people into that direction. I know you say COVID broke a lot of people's brains, but I genuinely think that 2020 BLM broke a lot of young black men's brains in the worst direction. This is all because of this momentum. Joe Brandon coming in and saying he's going to do shit to alleviate police violence and structural inequalities, and he actively made those two things worse. I think that's the biggest factor of why young black men are shifting more Republican. No, I don't agree with that. But I do think that what the Democrats did, it's not just about young black men. It's just across the board. What the Democrats did is neuter an entire generation's political ambitions. Okay? Because black men are the least consequential aspect of this equation. It's more so the Hispanic voting bloc. Some of the biggest gains, some of the biggest switches that has taken place Okay. If you're thinking about like who swung in which direction, it's like Hispanic dudes. Okay. Way more than black dudes did. And ultimately, part of the reason why I think is because like there's a lot of Latino people that are seeing themselves more and more within the white in group. I mean, one of the greatest examples of this is like this lady I saw the other day posting about how she got into an Uber and the Uber driver said, "No hablo inglés." And she was like, it's time to do mass deportations. Okay. And it's really strange because her last name is like fucking Rodriguez or Menendez or something. Savannah Hernandez. Her name is Savannah Hernandez. And she's like, we must deport all of these goddamn Mexicans. It's like, what? Like, what the hell are you talking about? What the fuck? What? Bro, who do you think is on the chopping block? If the only motivation for this kind of resentment is unironically white nativist attitudes, you're not white, dumbass. You're going too. Just as the entire reason as to why we had to fucking do mass deportations was because all of these guys are criminals and rapists and violent drug dealers, and they're doing all this stuff, and it wasn't fucking true at all. And that's precisely the reason why the Trump administration currently is like trying to deport a 4-year-old. Okay, like we're deporting 4th graders, 4-year-olds, 16-year-olds, in high school. What happened to the violent drug dealers? Oh, it turns out that obviously the government wasn't just letting rapists go if they were undocumented. Oh my God. Because it had nothing to do with prosecuting crimes adequately and everything to do with trying to make America a more white country. So yeah, I don't know why people like this think that they're not on the chopping block inevitably, considering that the starting point of resentment is not a real crime prevention attitude. That's just a selling point. It's the same shit that like black conservatives tell themselves about the dichotomy between, some black people and other black people that are hood, Oh, it's not us that they hate. It's the thugs that they hate. It's like, no, dude, they hate you too, dumbass. The fuck? Like, it doesn't come from, there is no real distinction there. There is no valid distinction there, okay? But anyway, you can't, the thing is, the Democrats used to at least like rely on that like resentment that Republicans represent with regular frequency to drum up a base of support, to galvanize a base of support that came from these backgrounds, right? But now it's over. This past election, there was a decoupling of racial politics that I think the Democrats are not ready for. Okay, I'm stupid and was not really tapped into politics when this happened, but how did Democrats vilify and alienate men and not just alienate everybody? They did alienate everybody, but they also specifically by like Democrats want to present themselves as anti-racists, right? Democrats want to present themselves as anti-racist. And there's a couple different ways of doing that. If you are really an anti-racist, you want to solve some of the material inequalities that black and brown people are facing in this country, okay? But you don't want to really do that because that would require you to actually do anything in the legislative agenda, and obviously that's going to be a big problem, right? So the way that Democrats have positioned themselves as anti-racist is basically by saying white men are the devil, okay? Just by presenting themselves as like anti-white men. White men are dangerous, white men are the devil. Now, it's not totally off base to say those things, okay? I'll say something like that. I'm a white man myself, But it's ultimately, it's not how you fucking craft a campaign. You feel me? You can't do that. You just can't do that. I don't remember the Democrats saying that. Oh my Lord. They didn't fucking come out and say white men are the devil entirely, okay? They didn't like verbatim say that. I'm obviously exaggerating. Hello, I'm a Twitch streamer. Fuck. I'm talking about how like their policy positioning revolved around, oh shit, hold on. Fuck. Efendim baba. Okay.
Not
okay,
just white men,
gönderiyordum. Hadi
but
bay bay.
men. And I mean, I get the idea that they thought Tim Walz could, what's the term he used? Code switch or something? He thought that he could translate the Democratic Party values because he hunts and fishes and owns a gun and was in the army and drinks a beer. I mean, at least there was an attempt. But I find it just insane.
Yeah, hold on. I got to do something real quick. Jesus Christ. Hold on. 1 second. I don't remember Democrats saying that. I know, but how so? That's what the Republicans say Democrats do? Yes, that is. Have you ever taken note of how there is this cartoonish depiction of like woke that right-wing circles will oftentimes cast the entire progressive movement with? And then sometimes leftists will adopt that cartoonish depiction and will end up leaning into it for no discernible reason. Do you feel like this is something that liberals do sometimes? It sounds like you agree with Jake Tapper then. No, I don't. I think I have a more nuanced I have a more nuanced approach to this than Jake Tapper, because Jake Tapper himself is a person that only thinks Jake Tapper himself is also conservative and also presents himself as a hurdle in front of what the Democrats must do in order to create a broad coalition. Okay? Democrats believe the Republican framing DEI hurts white men when in reality, more often than not, they just never message broad general policies that will connect the white men. Exactly. That's why universality is the best approach here. That's why I always advocate for universal policies. Okay? But when you bring that up, when you bring up universal policies, like one of the greatest examples during 2016 and in 2020 was the way that Democrats counter-messaged against Bernie Sanders. That's what I'm talking about. Okay? When they counter-messaged against Bernard Sanders, they did it on the virtue of Bernie bros, Bernie bros. Bernie bros are dangerous. Bernie bros are bad. Bernie bros are misogynistic. Bernie bros are sexist. And that was effectively a way to weaponize identity politics in the silliest fucking ways possible against a dude who was advocating for universal policies. Now, why is that significant? One of the things that really frustrated me, and there's videos of this back when I was covering during like the agitative propaganda, when I had the show called Agitprop on TYT, I talked about this extensively. One of the things I covered was Bernie Sanders' policies on universal alleviation of poverty. Okay, Bernie Sanders had a lot of universal policies. Bernie Sanders had a lot of universal policies that would overwhelmingly target black and brown communities, right? But he never actually said he was overwhelmingly and directly targeting black and brown communities. And the media would consistently turn around and say things like, well, where's your criminal justice reform? You're not talking about criminal justice reform. He was, right? Of course he was. But once again, the idea that liberals presented was the only way to cut policy for black people is by talking about how you're going to get black people out of prison, which is inherently a fucking insanely racist way to approach the subject. Okay? What do you think? Who do you think gets helped with policies that destroy poverty? Okay? Policies that combat poverty. Who do you think gets helped more? Poor people. And black people and brown people in general live in underserved communities are represented in a higher percentage in those groups. Okay, that's it. The idea that the only way in the legislative side is by talking about fucking criminal justice is insane. Obviously, criminal justice reform plays a major role, and Bernie Sanders had that in his platform as well. But the notion that like the only way to talk about black people, the only way to do good policies against black people is either by targeting black small business owners in the way that Kamala Harris was trying to do, or rather by simply talking about like criminal justice reform is insane. That was very frustrating to me as someone who looked at the situation in South Carolina with Jim Clyburn and how Jim Clyburn was like anti-Bernie. And a big part of the reason why Jim Clyburn was anti-Bernie was because he was backed by the fucking the same for-profit insurance companies that were giving him a ton of money. I think Democrats outwardly talk about how diversity for diversity's sake is actually a solution, but they have more insidious ways of vilifying men of all races. You need to shift people's focus away from fighting for crumbs between races to fight for the actual pie against the ruling class. Exactly. Democrats won't do that because they are designed. They are designed.
Senator Sanders, I do want to put...
Yeah, here. They are, the Democratic Party is designed as a hurdle against actual progressive policies, against anti-capitalist measures.
The same question to you, Senator Sanders. What message do you think?
Answer that question, but I wanted to get back to the issue of climate change for a moment, because I do believe this is the existential issue.
Senator, with race, can you answer the question as it was asked?
I certainly can.
Like, this is a perfect demonstration. Look, let's do it again.
Senator Sanders, I do want to put the same question to you, Senator Sanders. What message do you think?
Answer that question, but I wanted to get back to the issue of climate change for a moment, because I do believe this is the existential issue.
Senator, with all respect, this question is about race. Can you answer the question as it was asked?
I certainly can, because people of color, in fact, are going to be the people suffering most if we do not deal with climate change.
That's it. Universal policies are incredibly important, because speaking about these policies from the perspective of universality is great, because one, you don't alienate any demographics by doing so, with the exception of the rich, I guess, and that's fine. But you also are addressing issues that impact these communities directly. Okay? Like, who do you think benefits more? Who do you think benefits more from Medicare for all? A rich white person or a poor black person? Overwhelmingly, these communities that are poorer on average will benefit more from universal programs. That's it. Same with climate change, same with everything. But it's very frustrating that Democrats are allergic to this kind of messaging. Even if it's fucking performative, they're allergic to it. They love the performance of, like, attacking people. So attacking people that do take the universal approach. So do you understand what I mean when I say the Democrats did this to themselves for years and years and years? Do you get it? That's it. That's what I'm talking about when I said, like, the way that they presented themselves is like they tried to posture as though, like, these are actually racist, or anything that helps, like, white men is actually racist. And it's really stupid because the racial depolarization has already taken place, so it doesn't even fucking matter. Like, here, Kamala doing pretty poorly among both black and Indian voters, and an underrated blow to the IDPOL theory of electoral politics, specifically the idea that Biden Hillary's weakness with non-whites compared to Obama was just about him being black and them being white. Yeah, I mean, I've talked about this extensively as well. Obviously, a hill I will die on is the Democratic response to 30 million people participating in the George Floyd protests is responsible for a large chunk of nihilism and detachment we see in our politics today. Yeah, I think the first wave of nihilism and detachment came under the Obama administration, and the final blow was delivered by the final blow. It's death by 1,000 cuts, but big blows came along the way. I think it was a major blow to all of the progress, all the hope, all of the grassroots momentum that was designed to play a significant role in American politics on the Democratic side, on the progressive side, under the Obama Hope and Change campaigning versus, like, how he actually performed at the executive level. And then obviously Hillary Clinton cutting away at Bernie Sanders in 2016 played a major role in causing discontent amongst the base, causing people to say, fuck this, I don't care about this at all. And then the final death blow was delivered when Joe Biden won. Okay? 75% of the country was, like, on board with the police precinct being burned down. in the immediate aftermath of the execution of George Floyd, okay, in broad daylight. Think about that. They understood and sympathized with an action that is insane, okay, that you would never expect from Americans. I say this all the time. People that had their first foray into political action did everything. They mobilized. They engaged in direct action. They protested. They fucked shit up. They yelled in the streets. And then when push came to shove, they turned around, they held their nose, and they voted for Joe Biden. They thought this is going to move the needle in the right direction. So what happened? Did we move in the right direction? No, of course not. Democrats spent most of that campaign shitting on the activist base, then turned around and still continued to vilify the defund the police movement is wrong and bad and whatever. Instead of trying to understand where this resentment was coming from and try to find like a reasonable path forward, they just actively tried to run away from their base again and again and again. That's it. That's it. And look where we're at now. Of course, that's going to cause a lot of nihilism. Of course, it's going to cause a lot of nihilism. For so many people, this was their first foray into mass action. They were met with no even the most meager of positive changes, but instead a party who vowed to fund the police more and shit on their slogans at every opportunity. Way to teach a generation that nothing you will do will ever change anything. Yeah. And then there's always a synopsis after the fact where people will turn around and go like, they'll do an autopsy, right? And you see that even today where people are like, crime is down. It's actually better than it's ever been. So why are people freaking out about crime? Okay. Here, this is like all the data scientists, Statistics Urban, like data scientists who are oftentimes like very firmly committed to liberalism. Crime has declined significantly since its peak in the early 90s, yet today 63% of Americans say crime in the U.S. is extremely or very serious, a 7-point increase from 1996, when actual crime rates were nearly twice as high. Homicide has been a bit more tricky, but the murder rate is still about half of what it was in the 80s and 90s, only very slightly higher than the 60s. Now, maybe the crime in the U.S. can still be called serious, and yes, it can be. Of course it's serious. America's a very violent nation. And I've been on this. I've been on the propaganda front, fighting against the sea of lies for years at this point. And this is the easiest way to describe it. Apps like Nextdoor, Citizen, and Ring make people hysterical and make them think crime is ever present and nonstop happening. The crime panic wave from the media designed to boost cop credibility post Black Lives Matter protests is obviously another reason why people were like, oh my God, it's happening all the time. It's happening all the time. It's happening nonstop, you know? And then last but not least, the most visible version of crime is homelessness. And when homelessness skyrockets in big cities, in blue cities, that's where you saw major drop-offs from the Democratic Party, okay? Like, this is the other side of the story. A lot of people go, oh, well, Kamala didn't, like, underperform that significantly in rural areas or in, like, in states with like larger rural populations and whatnot. She actually, in comparison to Joe Biden, significantly underperformed in big cities. And that problem is twofold. One, because a lot of rich people have been radicalized into thinking that crime is literally ever present and someone is going to rape and kill your entire family any moment. So we have to do Nazi-style policies and melt the working poor and specifically kill every homeless person. Okay. And on the other front, all the poor people that normally would go out and vote that are infinitely more progressive than the Democratic Party itself are just going, why the fuck would I vote for you guys? You guys are not doing shit for me. It offends. All I hear here in Philly. Yeah. Philadelphia is a fantastic example of this because Larry Krasner was the method. Okay. Larry Krasner is the method for progressive DAs in the entire country. He was singled out as like the worst one. And Fox News constantly talked about how he was letting rapist decapitators go wild on the streets. Larry Krasner, unlike many of these other progressive DAs that got quickly dealt with in places like San Francisco and whatnot, was able to consistently, despite the undemocratic initiatives presented by the Republicans in the state of Pennsylvania, was able to overcome these issues. He was able to overcome the propaganda. He was able to overcome the numerous attacks. He was even able to overcome this undemocratic way of trying to unseat him in the past. They tried to do that too. Okay? He just destroyed his challenger last week, and Philadelphia is a bright shining light in terms of eviscerating crime statistics, okay? He's done a phenomenal job, at least by every fucking metric, in terms of dealing with crime. How did that happen? How the fuck did that happen? It's because he was not allowed, he did not allow to be cooed, okay? The most hilarious thing is the Republicans want to run Krasner's Democratic challenger that lost on their ticket. People also didn't vote Kamala simply because she's a black woman. Let's not forget that part. That's not as significant of a part of this puzzle as you think it is, I promise. Unless you personally think that Mexico is a pro-woman nation state, like more pro-woman and also pro-Jewish in comparison to the United States of America. Because Claudia Sheinbaum is a Jewish woman who is infinitely more popular than Donald Trump and was infinitely more popular than Kamala Harris. Okay? No, don't say it is. Y'all are fucking crazy. Mexico has a massive issue with femicide. No, even in a country where there's a massive issue with femicide, you can still elect a Jewish woman in an overwhelmingly fucking Catholic country. How the fuck does that happen? It's because the Morena Party was popular. Okay? It's because the Morena Party was popular. Why was the Morena Party popular? The reason why the Morena Party was popular is because it expanded the welfare state. Okay? She is not more popular than Trump. What? She is, like, I think 8 times more popular than Trump. What the fuck are you talking about? Trump is still very unpopular. Wake up. Some of you motherfuckers hang out with Trump supporters exclusively and I guess like beam a bunch of idiotic propaganda into your minds. Claudia Sheinbaum is one of the most popular politicians in the entire Western world. What are you talking about? It's not even a question. And people were aggressively trying to come after me. All the libs, all the Mexican libs were trying to come after me for saying like Morena is a much better alternative. Yeah, she had like I think 85% approval rating. Like that's like we're talking George W. Bush after 9/11 numbers. Okay, just to be clear on earlier, you're just criticizing the monolithic policies based on race, but at the same time, the framing Bernie used there for poor people being comprised of POCs and not whites was all right in use. Yes, because the question is specifically about Bernie Sanders' inability to address like issues that pertain to black people and brown people. And he's saying like, who the fuck do you think gets helped in this situation? Black people and brown people too. As a matter of fact, in larger percentages than white people because they happen to be the underserved communities we're talking about. It's not like Bernie's running around being like, black people and brown people, they're so poor, they're broke. They're broke. They're all fucking poor. They live in poverty. Anyway, you're gay, tremendous. You're black, fantastic. You're gay, tremendous. Yeah, Claudia Sheinbaum hits 85%, record 85% approval rating as she assures Mexico is ready to face tariffs. She's doing better than Andrés Manuel López Obrador, who was also the GOAT of, like, I would say that AMLO, as far as I understand, was like even more charismatic than Claudia Sheinbaum is. Like, from what I've seen, at least, of all the live streams that AMLO used to do to cut away, to break off from like the domineering force of liberal politics that is backed by capital in all of mainstream media in Mexico. He was able to basically do these live streams, and he's like a very weird guy, and I think that's part of the reason why he was like seen as like old, but at least like a lovable old person, you know. Claudia, on the other hand, is much more serious than AMLO is, and she is still much more popular than he is. I think it's partially because she's young. Sheinbaum is not as charismatic as AMLO, but she's less polarizing. AMLO had more detractors on the left than Claudia does. He was also a household name for decades, and that brings lovers and haters. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I saw this. I fucking love this guy's memes, dude. It's hilarious. Hey, can you guys just run on healthcare at the bare minimum? I think that would the DNC. How to fold. Democrats spend millions to learn how to speak to American men and win back the working class. Nope. We're folding, boys. We are fucking folding. I hate that this is I hate this article, dude. I genuinely hate this fucking attitude that the Dems have. Like, they are just not, they are allergic to understanding what the real issue is. Breaking, the DNC is reportedly planning to spend $20 million on a campaign to reclaim support from young men amid polling that shows an increasing shift towards Republicans. That's the point. I disagree of FD signifier, not saying the racism didn't play a role, but like Brazil is extremely xenophobic over our northeastern population, extremely against poor people, super racist and homophobic. And we didn't have to address our dictatorship, and we still elected Lula and Dilma. Oh, balls. Admin passing a 600% tariff tomorrow. I agree with you. It's gross, but if Republicans aren't doing that much, why are people still voting for them anyway? It's simple. Republicans dominate discourse, and they dominate policy. They are able to literally redirect people's attention to made up bullshit. Okay? It's that simple. They make shit up, and then the Democrats have no way of dealing with it. The Democrats have no way of going, hey, that's made up actually. Okay? They don't do anything. They don't do anything. And then the Democrats turn around and go, actually, you know what? Oops, you caught us. We were lying this whole time. Immigrants are criminal rapists. Like, what do you expect the average dumb guy to think at that point? Why do you think the fucking the Iraqi Uber driver is like, my sister is undocumented on U.S. soil right now. We can't get her citizenship, but we have to fucking purge our ranks with these like criminal elements that are coming from God knows where. How do you think that guy arrived at that position? He arrived at that position because he's getting beamed misinformation on a daily basis with no counter whatsoever, no counter messaging. What the fuck do you expect? If you want to fix the messaging side, you got to do that. You got to fight in the fucking trenches. You have to humanize the migrants. You have to advocate for amnesty. You have to showcase that like advocating for amnesty is actually popular. It is a popular measure. It is more popular than fucking advocating for mass deportation. It's so dumb. And then we go, oh, how could this have happened? It's like, you let it happen. You fucking let it happen. No, it's not about, there's no lib Fox News. It's about what lib Fox News does, okay? CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC, all of these liberal outlets ranging from like center-right to I guess, centrist, MSNBC being like a centrist, center-left outlet, okay? They all are at the mercy of Republican discourse. They get dominated by Republican discourse. The Republicans flood the market with a whole bunch of bullshit, and Dems have no way of dealing with it and seemingly no interest of dealing with it at all. Oh, Trump is a fascist, but we also have to find a way to cooperate with these fascists. Like, okay, well, that doesn't make any sense. Then he's not a fascist, or you're a fascist. Which is it? What's going on here? I've been in the motherfucking trenches nonstop for the past 10 years. I'm telling you, okay? Think about why you have arrived at the conclusions you've arrived at, because you get a lot of your information here. You get a lot of your information here where I go through right-wing outlets, centrist outlets, liberal outlets, leftist outlets, and I parse through the disinformation mania piece by piece and go through all of the fake nonsense the Republicans run on and demand that the Democrats actually counter message against it. They don't, and then they fucking are shocked. These things take time, okay? These things take a long-ass time. Democrats are afraid to lead. Democrats are afraid to be identified by tangible policies that actually help the working poor. They want to basically be the gay version of, and nobody at the end of the day wants Diet MAGA when the real thing is easy to fucking get. What is this? Cody Shody brought me up.
Well, he doesn't really need to spend that much, does he? Other richer people are doing that for him. The reason right-wing media is bigger is because it has more money. And the reason it has more money is because right-wing media says the stuff rich people want said. They don't need to actually make money. They just need to spread the message and support their ideological project, which will end up making them more money. In fact, we're now hearing that the Democrats are realizing this way too late and are trying to bankroll their own influencers and propagandists. So I guess an army of people who will defend Joe Biden no matter what, thus earning people's trust. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this because
Yeah, guess what, dude? I said this initially when this first came out. I was like, if you think that the multi-billion-dollar sophisticated information peddling network that is mainstream media was unable to move the needle, normalize Joe Biden, and make Biden a better alternative, or make Kamala Harris a better alternative, why the fuck do you think a couple podcasts are going to move the needle? What are you, crazy? Like, people at the end of the day still have the capacity to realize their own material circumstances. They recognize when they're experiencing negative real wage growth. You can't just be like, Joe Biden is the most pro working class president of all time. How dare you actually disparage the big, beautiful boy? He did so many incredible things. He did the CHIPS Act. He did the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. It's like, okay, well, people's pockets are hurting. They don't see that. They go, I'm working class and my pockets are screaming right now. Fuck you.
Because there might be a whole other episode about it, and it isn't what this episode's about. But there's this attempt to find or literally create this liberal Joe Rogan figure. I've seen people literally suggest that Bill Maher is that person, or claim that the success of the Midas Touch podcast indicates that it's possible. Unrelated, I am willing to shave my head and lift a bunch of weights. But these aren't in the same category or world at all. Those are exclusively political shows for people interested in politics. Joe Rogan spent years and years being apolitical and talking about whatever, and eventually he got rich enough and dumb confident enough to go all in for Trump. You can't manufacture a person to talk about whatever and be normal for. And right around election time, they'll be like, hey, you guys ever notice that tax credits are pretty based, actually? It doesn't work that way. That being said, yes, left-wing media does need money and support. They just also need to not be on the Democrats' leash so that they can be authentic and actually point out when, for example, the president is old and dying, or we're financially supporting a genocide and how maybe that's bad, without being attacked by those Democrats. They're just different ecosystems and parties. Also,
yeah, that's the other side of this, is like, Republicans also don't give a shit when Joe Rogan criticizes Republicans. Like, they'll still go on that show. Democrats, on the other hand, are like, oh my God, you're criticizing me for my Israel policy and my inability to comprehend that the overwhelming majority of Americans actually have a lot of distaste for the ongoing genocide that we are aiding and abetting. How dare you? Shut the fuck up. I will never actually allow you. I will never actually come and talk to you ever again. It's like, okay, well, good luck, you know? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? Fucking lie? Yeah, give me $20 million. I'll lie, you know? Fucking stupid.
Also, not for nothing, but an alternative to pumping millions of dollars into propagandists and influencers to convince people that your party is good is just doing and believing in good things. Find your message, and the messengers will follow. But again, not what this is about. I'm sure it'll go great. Just pump billions into Gavin Newsom's podcast to appeal to the youths.
Yeah. Do you see Dave Weigel talking about Trump's approval recovering already? Trump's approval rating has totally recovered from Liberation Day swoon. One Schumer premise that was that the Dems would keep resisting and the attention on Trump's policy would drive the numbers down, but that hasn't happened. Yeah, it's because the Democrats stopped resisting. They're no longer... They barely resisted for like 3.5 seconds. And immediately Trump's approval rating went down. And then they were like, see, we don't have to do anything, actually. They ain't doing shit. Why? Dude, this is why I always fucking say, like, this is the responsibility this is the responsibility of the Democrats as well. It's not just the Republicans. The Republicans are primarily responsible for Republican policies, but the Democrats are also responsible for their inaction. It's so dumb. Ken says, never in my life has just a ghost ship as it is today. Incredible there aren't more insurgent primary campaigns. Power is just sitting there, and the only thing guarding it is fossils like Chuck Schumer. Like, Republicans campaign year round, okay? They don't just do it every 4 years. They campaign year round. They have issues that they know are broadly unpopular, but that doesn't stop them from advocating for those issues. They're constantly working within their think tanks to figure out new methods of messaging. The trans issue is a great example of this. They took a major fucking L in North Carolina. Donald Trump ran as a pro-trans candidate. in 2016. He literally ran as a pro-trans candidate. I repeat, he ran as a pro-trans candidate in 2016. What changed? All of those like family annihilator, family values party style think tanks went back to the drawing board and figured out what was a more effective way of conducting and crafting anti-trans messages. They figured out that if you're just attacking trans people alone on the virtue of them being trans, you look like a fucking bully, and most people don't really care about it that much. But if you actually couple anti-trans panic with like a concept that Americans actually believe is still meritocratic, sports, especially if you tackle it as like children's sports, because Americans also want to protect their children, all of a sudden, gangbusters. Okay. And then they went back and they hammered that fucking issue over and over and over again. Now, the alternative in that situation is not for the Democrats to also go, yeah, fuck trans people. The alternative in that situation is the Democrats to actually create policies that genuinely improve people's lives so that the Republicans have to actually focus on that shit, focus on undermining that shit instead of attacking minority groups that are vulnerable, that have no mechanism of pushback to begin with. That's it. That's it. It's also like a lot of people think, oh, you have to tackle every single issue within the confines that the Republicans present. You don't have to do that. That's why my number one, depending on who I'm talking to, but my number one way of like talking about trans issues is, why do you care about this? Why? Why do you care about this? You're a fucking weirdo for caring about this. It's 1% of the fucking population. They are not hurting you at all. Let these people live. Why do you fucking care about this? You're insane. Is actually a infinitely more effective way of dealing with this conversation than whatever the fuck the Democrats have done so far. Okay? The hyper focus on trans people comes across, especially when people are suffering financially, and all you're doing is just being like, you know what, we need to kill as many trans people as possible. It's like people are going to look at that and go, I don't care, dude. What the fuck? If the Democratic Party was also reduced to a couple signature policies, then this, you know, trans panic narratives would fall flat. Because if one party is saying, hey, we want to actually do amnesty instead of mass deportation, it's more popular. These people literally work within these communities. They are wonderful parts of the makeup of these communities, okay? And once they have amnesty, conditional amnesty, they will be able to even participate in these communities in more meaningful ways, including generate additional tax revenue, okay? And also, we are advocating for free healthcare and free college education. America is no longer competitive at the global stage when it comes to education. Our labor force is getting outcompeted. They're getting outmeted by every fucking country on the planet. We have to fix this. And say that you are also tackling corruption, lobbying, and the pervasive influence of lobbying, and how corrosive that has been, how disgusting that has been, how much of an oligarchy it has created in this country. Okay? Anti-corruption, pro-healthcare, pro-free college, and pro-amnesty for undocumented migrants, conditional amnesty for undocumented migrants. All of a sudden, you have policies that everyone can identify with, everyone can associate with, or fixing the housing problem by creating government housing, okay? Creating public housing, no public-private partnership, fixing transportation, fixing the fucking potholes, okay? The meat and potatoes of it all. Doing that and becoming the party that actually values those things and is fighting for those things are going to create an impossible force. They're going to automatically cause the Republicans to go against those policies. Those are popular policies. You automatically trap Republicans into a position where they have to advocate against those policies. If that was the case, then no one gives a fuck about dominating the 12 trans athletes in the entire country, okay? Do you understand? Do you see what I'm saying? Does this make sense to you? These things can change. They were different back in the day. Democrats benefited from the major gains made by the New Deal, and so did the Republicans, so did America in general. But Democrats politically were able to shift the Overton window to the center left for decades prior to Carter, okay? And post-Carter, especially after Ronald Reagan, everything changed. Neoliberalism became the permanent attitude that both parties represent. But there was a time in American politics, the Overton window was shifted in the direction of economic progress and labor protection, regardless of the fact that capital was aggressively targeting this and aggressively undermining any sort of like labor militancy, any sort of like mechanism of pushback that existed in the country that was relatively powerful. Okay? It is very frustrating that Democrats don't want to do that. And then they want to do this instead. Democrats spending millions to learn how to speak to American men and win back the working class. How do Dems win back young men? Like, no disrespect, but like, how is this helping? Making men feel welcome, meeting men where they're at, inclusive messaging, simple policy platform, messaging to men. Dems are wrong about men. It's so crazy that this is a major part of the story here. Anyway, days after Jake Tapper fumed over a joke made about his teenage son wanting to be a police officer in an appearance on a left-leaning podcast claiming it was the reason why Democrats are losing elections, the host of How Long Gone responded to the CNN anchor. Him willfully choosing to take a joke wrong that he definitely knew what it was in the moment, I would say is only a pro move, co-host Chris Black drawly noted. He spun it for his own gain, and it's working. Tapper, who is relentlessly promoting his book, Original Sin, recently appeared alongside co-author Alex Thompson on Scott Galloway's podcast, The Professor G-Pod, to discuss their tome about Joe Biden's cognitive decline and the alleged cover-up of the former president's health ahead of the 2024 election. At one point, Tapper brought up an appearance he made on the left-leaning podcast that shall remain nameless in order to argue that liberals in the Democratic Party are losing political ground among young men. Specifically, he referenced an exchange he had with the host about his 15-year-old son's admiration for law enforcement. Their joke was about my 15-year-old son. Oh, how does he feel about minorities? Like the idea that he wants to be a policeman, therefore racist. That was a big laugh, the CNN star grumbled. And then I got dragged in the comments and all that stuff. And I thought to myself, this is why you fuckers are losing elections. Someone actually sent me the link to the podcast, by the way. I think it was like 1,000 views and like 30 comments total. Does anyone have that link? Oh, here it is. Here's the clip. 1,000 views and 9 comments. How Long Gone, 1,000 views. And it's like all new, 420.
Your demo, young men or youngish men, younger than me men, is especially Gen Z. Like, is
like, where did you see the comments? Where are the comments that showed discontent? This has 10 comments total, and 2 of them are from the last 4 to 8 hours when Jake Tapper actually criticized the podcast. There's one that says 4210 for those wondering. You read my mind. Thank you so much. Thanks. Bro, there is no way. This is 1,000 views, man. 1,000 views. He just presented this as though this is like a major point of discontent when it's like dudes who are just joking, okay? He's 15. He thinks about World War II. While neither Tapper nor Galloway identified the show where the comments were made, it soon became obvious that it occurred during the CNN's host April 2nd appearance on How Long Gone, a pop culture podcast that launched during the pandemic and soon became a cult hit for its joke-laden and controversial approach. In its write-up of Tapper's complaints about How Long Gone, the Daily Mail claimed that the Original Sin author was outraged after woke podcast suggested his child was racist for absurd reason. Meanwhile, during the interview in question, the host and Tapper discussed the politics of Gen Z, especially among young men. When Tapper said that he understood why the Democrats were struggling so much with teenage males because they don't speak any language that my son speaks, the conversation shifted to the younger Tapper's interests. With Tapper calling them out on Galloway's podcast, Black and Stewart responded during their latest episode, How Long Gone, a black a tastemaker and brand consultant kicked off the latest broadcast by jokingly referencing Daily Mail's headline. Anyway, I don't know. I mean, this story is so fucking utterly irrelevant. I'm sorry. No disrespect to this podcast, but all disrespect to Jake Tapper. But yeah, Tapper jokingly responds in the moment too because he understands it's a joke, obviously. And here, this is... At one point, Tapper revealed his son likes the military and likes police. Co-host Jason, how does he feel about minorities? Pausing for a beat, Tapper said he's pro before moving to a discussion about text messages his daughter sent him recently. The interview would continue for another 25 minutes and concluded with the anchor expressing willingness to come back this summer to talk about the Biden book. He's pro. Anyway, this is like, I don't understand. In that clip, the hosts are joking around and just kind of thrown off by him saying his 15-year-old son likes police in the military, and the host goes like the band the police. It's insane he got upset by this. Anyway, listen to me. None of this is relevant, okay? This is all utterly irrelevant and silly and stupid. There are much broader problems here at play. There is discontent brewing, okay? There's discontent brewing in every demographic. Women see how fucking reactionary young women, especially, see how fucking counterparts have become, especially in the last 5 to 10 years. That causes them to take a defensive posture by voting overwhelmingly for the Democratic Party, which they see as like a better alternative. Okay. There is a, I guess, gender polarization among young women, whereas there is a racial depolarization happening in the grander stage for all age demographics within the duopoly structure that we have between the Democrats and the Republicans. Okay? It's understandable that women look at the overwhelming sea of resentment that men are displaying with regular frequency and turn around and go, okay, as a mechanism of defense, I'm just going to vote for this party that isn't like openly anti-women. Okay? Second-class citizens who can't travel to all states, only women of color. I think that women of color overwhelmingly, but women in general, even white women are young white women are still pro-Democratic Party as opposed to older white women. Okay? If you want to address these issues, you have to focus on the principles of universality and throw some red meat to the Republicans to counter message against. If you don't do that, if you stand for nothing, then you can be presented as being for anything that the Republicans choose that you are for. Do you understand? That's how this works. Hold on. Alo baba. Okay, açık zaten. Açık. Evet. Şey açık. Gate açık. Hadi bye bye. How many women are you? Anyway, this is a major issue that I don't think will be solved anytime soon, and I don't really know how the Democrats are choosing to solve this issue. All I know is the Democrats are refusing to solve this problem, and I just, like, everything that they've signaled so far feels to me like they don't give a shit. They don't give a shit at all, and it's kind of terrifying. Opinion: 21 unexpected heavy hitters for a Democratic shadow cabinet. Here's who the party should tap to take on Trump and refresh the Democrat brand. Oh, brother. There's like 4 people I like on this. That's crazy. Oh, Samantha Power. Oh, Lena Khan, my queen. General Charles C.Q. Brown Jr. Letitia James. Oof. She ain't that bad. John Tester. John Boyd Jr. Mark fucking Cuban. Bobby Olvera Jr. One union supported tariffs. What am I looking at? Governor Josh Green. They're just fantasizing about like a lib coalition that is like a shadow government. They had a former Trump guy on there because he disagreed once. Mayor Freddie O'Connell. Governor Katie Hobbs. Okay. This is Aaron Sorkin porn? Yeah. I don't know much about Samantha Power, but I met her once and she was nice. What's her deal? Agent. I wish they'd stop trying to rehab their image like an old condemned house that are doing fucking anything. Yeah, we need to find, and then John Stewart, Shadow Secretary of Veterans Affairs. We need to find as many, this is the resistance. We need to find as many like squishy libs as possible. We need to find as many conservative liberals as possible. This will surely fix the problem. All right. You missed the best one. Who? Bill Nye, Governor Laura Kelly, Michael Collins, Abigail Spanberger, Ben Stein, Nikki Glazier. What the fuck? Dude, there's no fixing any of this shit. All right, let's just get to... Listen, stop. I don't care. Stop. You missed Giselle Fetterman. I don't care. Okay, great. Yeah, we need... Yes, Giselle Fetterman is a part of the shadow cabinet.